Hello, Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity, and today we're going to talk about a, unfortunately, very commonly used diabetic medication referred to as the sulfonylurea class of drugs. Think things like Glucotrol, which is glipizide, Glyburide, Glucovance. It is a drug that's been used for a while for diabetes, and what it does is it prods or stimulates the beta cells of the pancreas, which are what makes insulin, to make more insulin. When I say prod, we could talk like cattle prod use. It's forcing the beta cells to do something it's not quite ready for. And before we go on as to why this is a problem and why it's still a problem, make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel. But why is this a concern? I remember the first post I wrote on this was back in May of 2009, so like 15 years ago, pointing out that this class of drugs actually damages the beta cells of the pancreas. So the very cells we want to protect, they are damaging. So while they are forcing the beta cells to do more work, and maybe make more insulin for a short period of time, in the long run, you're burning the candle at both ends. And so ultimately, this leads to extra oxidative stress and beta cell damage, and may actually make the diabetic who wants to avoid insulin, forces them into an insulin-dependent state. Which is crazy, right? I mean, it's a commonly used diabetic drug. Like, this isn't, like, I don't prescribe it, and yet I was aware of it 15 years ago, and yet it is still being very heavily used. So how heavily used? This was a study out of Italy looking at asking diabetologists, people who treat diabetes, and they followed them from 2010 to 2020 because the guidelines now steer away from the sulfonylurea. There are some newer drugs within this class that maybe are a little bit protective, but being a lifestyle guy, I place exercise and diet long ahead of all of them. But they found that looking at 216,000 patients who were given these prescriptions, like that's a lot of prescriptions still being written. Average age was 68, and the beginning of the study, 30% of these patients, 30% of diabetologists gave a prescription for sulfonylurea. Over the time frame, it dropped down to 12.9%. Like, it's still being used. It was used very heavily, even when we knew it was causing damage. It's still being used relatively heavily. The bottom line is there is always a price to be paid for medication. You're forcing the body to do something it's not ready to do or it doesn't want to do. There is, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no drug that I'm aware of for anything that actually goes along with normal physiology. They all fight normal physiology. So like in this case, the beta cells of the pancreas are starting to back off, and the sulfonylurea is going to force it to make more insulin. Over time, it burns out the beta cells of the pancreas. Exercise and dietary changes, however, do not do this, which is why I am forever a proponent of healthier lifestyle changes. No downsides to those unless you happen to get run over by a bus while you're out exercising, in which case just look both ways. And as I mentioned, as always, make sure you like this video, share it with somebody you think needs information, and subscribe to the channel.